I hope that the legacy for Harry Potter is that it's a world where anybody who feels like they don't belong can be safe. That's what I found from it. That's what I get from it. And that is what I love about the Harry Potter fandom.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're all having a wonderful day today. My name is Talal, and you are listening to the Popcorn and Soda Podcast, the show where we discuss all things movies, pop culture, and so much more. I want to thank each and every one of you for making me a small part of your day. On today's show, we're joined by a very special guest. He is one of the finest creative artists in the industry today. You know him as Percy Weasley in the iconic Harry Potter film franchise. With it being the 20th year anniversary of the original film, this franchise continues to inspire the next generation of creative artists all around the world. On the show today, the very talented Chris Rankin. How are you, Chris?
I'm very good. That is possibly the most fabulous introduction I've ever had on a podcast since podcast started. So thank you for that. It's lovely to be here.
Hey, my pleasure. Hey, I'll take that. I'll take it. Chris, how have you been over this last year? We're living in such a crazy world. What did 2020 look like for you?
2020 was very quiet and weird. It was really weird. Literally, I remember the first week in March, I did a Comic-Con on the 2nd of March, and then I went to London for an audition for a play on like the 13th of March, and then literally the diary just emptied. I remember as the UK went into lockdown, like literally sort of as every hour went past that next day, I'd get another message from my agent going, this has been postponed, it's been postponed, next job's been postponed, and everything just kind of shifted to the summer, then to the autumn, then to the spring, then to the summer, and now it's starting to come back to life. But it was a really weird, especially I'd say the first 3 months of it especially were just a kind of complete mess of panic and anxiety. And I'm sure that rings true for everybody around the world, really. Just none of us knew what the hell was going on. We didn't know what we were allowed to do, what we weren't allowed to do, what was, who was safe, who wasn't safe. It was pretty stressful. But I think, touch wood, we're kind of starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, I hope.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I agree with that in so many ways, especially with the lack of information and more so the lack of credible information. It's like, hey, if you see
there's credible information, then there was the sort of the conflicting information. I don't know what it was like for you guys, but over here, you'd be told, you can do this, but you can't do this, or you can do this with certain people, but not with other people. And like, nobody knew what was going on. Wear masks, but you should wear a mask, but then they might not really do anything. So don't really worry too much. If you can't wear a mask, definitely wear a mask. Like, it's just chaos. So yeah, I was essentially in a hazmat suit for, I looked like I was Breaking Bad for the first three months of last year.
No, it's we're in a similar situation where, me being in Toronto, we had one of the strictest lockdowns in like the entire world. And I know in England they had something very similar where it's literally like just now we're just starting to open up where we can actually go out and have more than like 3 people inside your home. So it's and movie theaters are still closed here. So it's been over a year and a half.
So, well, I think cinemas are open here. We have this complicated system that, as the UK has an overall government and then each individual area. So England is run by the UK government, but Wales, where I live, is run by a separate government, and Scotland is, and Northern Ireland is as well. So we have similar but very different sets of rules. So what's allowed in England, which is where I am right now, 20 miles away, like a 25-minute, half an hour drive, I'm in England, is a completely different set of rules. And today we've just found out that, whereas England is basically now, you can do what you like, you can hug everybody, no masks, apart from on like public transport and things. But theaters can open again at full capacity. Everything's kind of back to normal. Whereas here in Wales, it's you can only have 6 people indoors, and you still have to remain socially distanced. But as of, I think, next week, we can now have like mass gatherings outside and things. So it's stuck. We're being very cautious in Wales, and I'm kind of half grateful for it and half like I'm grateful for the fact that we're taking it sensibly, but equally it's complicated because my career and my work involves lots and lots of people, mostly strangers, packed into small rooms. So it's complex.
Jeez, yeah. Well, here's hoping to a better like third and fourth quarter of 2021, and hopefully by 2022 we'll return to somewhat of a new normal or whatever that may even look like, right?
Whatever that is, yes. Hopefully it'll be something we're used to by then.
So hey, I gotta ask you about this. Are you an England soccer fan or no?
I am not a soccer fan in any way, shape, or form. I was I was born in New Zealand. I live in Wales. I do rugby.
All right.
Rugby is my preferred ball sport by a long shot. Football has never done anything for me.
All right, then that's good.
After the behavior of the fans this weekend, I'm very pleased to say it's nothing to do with me.
Right on. Yeah, absolutely. That was a little crazy out there, but hey, that's good. You don't have to put too much emotional investment into that, because I know in the UK soccer is just massive.
It is. It's the national pastime, and people take it a little bit too seriously, I think, sometimes.
Just a tad bit, I feel like. Yeah.
A little bit.
Before we deep dive into all things Potter, I am so interested in your story, Chris. Where does this all begin for you? What were some of your early influences, and what made you want to be in the creative arts and specifically be an actor?
So, I mean, I've been a what I discovered is called an ambivert, an introverted extrovert. So I like to show off, but under very specific circumstances. And I always have been. Like I remember when I was little, I used to put on. Like, actually, there's a picture here. Hang on, I'll show you. There's a picture here of me dressed up when I was about, I don't know, 5. This is when we lived in New Zealand. So that was, but outside of the house, I would hide behind my mum. I wouldn't talk to anybody. I got anxious about all sorts of things. But I was always musical. I started playing the violin when I was 3 years old. Where is it? There it is on the wall behind me. And yeah, always been somewhat of a performer. And then when I was about, I guess, when I was 11, when I started high school, I auditioned for the high school show, which that year was a musical called Bugsy Malone. And I got a part in the chorus, and it was my first time doing anything kind of real. I mean, we do at like junior school here, there's always a nativity every year and things like that. Right. But like a proper performance that wasn't just for the other kids and the mums and dads, like members of the public were coming to this. That was my first show as Bugsy Malone when I was 11, and I played a dead body. It's a good way to start your career. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I was in the chorus, I did some other bits and bobs as well, but the kind of my crowning glory was being a dead body at the front of the stage for the beginning of the show. And I realized that, like, getting up on stage and pretending to be somebody else, I could kind of get away from that social anxiety and that shyness, and it didn't matter, like, because it wasn't me. It wasn't me that people were looking at. It was this other character that I was pretending to be. And I got the bug. I got absolutely hooked on it, and I've absolutely just fallen in love with performing ever since, really. And went from strength to strength through school and joined the community youth groups and the theatre groups, and did loads of shows and musicals and plays and all sorts of things. And then and then Potter happened when I was literally out of the blue, when I was 16.
So if I told 16-year-old Chris Rankin, who started off as a dead body on a stage, he's going to be part of one of the most beloved franchises of all time, what would he say?
He would say, "Don't be ridiculous." And I still say, "Don't be ridiculous," because it is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Like, it's completely nuts. I wrote a letter off that I gave very little thought to, and did it slightly. Well, I did it because a friend of mine was doing it, and I thought, well, what the hell have I got to lose? I wrote in this letter, which is how a lot of people got auditions for the first Potter film, is because they wanted, this sort of open casting process. So I wrote in a letter, and I was 16. And I said, I'm 16 years old. I'm a school prefect because we have those things in the UK. It's not something that got made up like school houses. We actually have
Oh,
those
okay.
as well, which I know people sort of around other parts of the world find absolutely amazing that
Oh yeah.
Hogwarts is the only place that has school houses. Yeah, so I wrote in saying I'm a school prefect, I'm ginger, and I'm 16 years old. Therefore, I would like to play Percy Weasley because that is the only part I ever stood a chance of getting. This is the 16-year-old ginger school prefect was like, if there's anybody made for that part, it is me, a 16-year-old ginger school prefect. But yeah, I never thought anybody would read it, let alone respond to it, let alone ask me to come in for an audition, and let alone get the bloody part. I mean, madness, absolute madness.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And it's one of those things where this franchise has become one of those like immortal film institutions where a generation of people want to be in the industry in some way, shape, or form because of this. A lot of people credit Star Wars, Jurassic Park, but for someone like me who's a 90s kid, this is it. This is the franchise that
Yeah,
changed everything. More specifically, that first one. If that one doesn't work, the others don't work either. And as we just talked about it a little, you have a very interesting perspective with the film as you're part of the larger world around the three protagonists, especially being a Weasley. And you mentioned like you wanted to be Percy Weasley, and I love that, going after an attitude. And I'm sure that's probably one of the reasons that they gave you a shot, or just aside from your talents as an actor. Were you familiar with the source material, the books, prior to finding out they're making a movie? Were you a Potterhead?
yeah, I was as much as it was possible to be a Potterhead at the time. There were three. I think there was three books out, um, and they were starting to gain traction. Like we're talking 1990, well, 2000, April 2000. I sent the letter in. Um, so yeah, three books were out. It was something that people were like. It was becoming a thing. Kids were reading it. They were starting to gain traction, but it wasn't by any stretch the kind of the sort of megalith thing that it was, say, 2 years later when, I don't know, the fifth book came out, when, and that was when it really started to get into the sort of serious midnight book release parties, people
Mm-hmm.
queuing around the block for hours to get their hands
Yeah,
on
like
copies.
dressing
Like,
up in their like favorite houses and whatnot. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that started really to come out, I guess, around the same time as the films. But I remember the fourth book came out just about the same time that I was auditioning, like 2 weeks before or something. And I remember getting the book really early on because I'd read the first. My mum's an English teacher, you see, so she brought me the first two books back from school because the school library had them in as new things, and she'd gone, "Oh, these are supposed to be really good. Read them." And I read them and absolutely loved them. And of course, then when the third book came out, I got that and read it straight away. And then the fourth book came out and I got it and read it straight away. But like, it wasn't prior to the films coming out, it wasn't the huge thing that it is now. I suppose it was something that you would read and you'd go, oh, have you read the new Harry Potter book? Isn't it great? All right. But it didn't have this enormous
Yeah, like this
sort of,
pop culture zeitgeist. It kind of just took over everything.
yeah. I think that came. I think that certainly came after the fourth book, or after the fourth book, around that kind of time.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to that very first movie where I feel like if that didn't work, it may, who knows? I'm sure the books would have still came out, and I'm sure they still would have been success. But it just brought in the audience so much more, where people are just more inclined to watching a movie and then finding the books after it, or maybe even vice versa. So for a role like Percy Weasley, what was the audition process like? How many people were auditioning for this role, and what did it really entail?
But that is a really good question, which I wish I had a lot more of an answer to. Uh, I don't know how many other people auditioned for Percy Weasley. I never saw another ginger person uh, at all, ever, until we started filming. Rumor has it that originally they were considering Sean Biggerstaff for Percy, who ended up playing Oliver Wood, Quidditch captain, who is a not doesn't have an English accent. He's very Scottish, and B, isn't ginger. So I don't know. I think originally they'd kind of thought about seeing him for that, and then decided he'd have been better Oliver Wood. I haven't
Right.
quite got my hands on the entire story behind that. But my audition process was alarmingly simple. like as I said, I wrote this letter off, and that was in April 2000, and they rang my home phone because this was before anybody had cell phones. In like it was mid late August that year, so I'd completely forgotten about it. I'd written the letter. I'd done my end of school, my GCSEs, which are the when you leave high school in the
Right,
UK, they're your
right.
kind of leaving certificate exams. Um, and then, yeah, just out of the blue, this phone call came in from somebody at David Heyman's office saying, "We would like to see you tomorrow in London to audition for Harry Potter. We're sending you, we're faxing you some script. Um, learn, have a look at it. Come in, and we'll see you. We'll see you tomorrow." So I went in, like having no idea what to do. Like read the script. My mum, as I said, was a teacher at my school, so she hooked me up with our drama teacher, who was very kind and sort of we went around his house at like 8 p.m. that night, and he kind of gave me some stuff to do rather than just standing there like a
Yeah.
absolute melon in the room looking like an idiot. Um, and yeah, I went down and I did it. It was the scene where Percy takes the first years from the Percy scene, basically the bit where he takes the first years up to the Gryffindor common room for the first time. So, you know, all the keep an eye on the staircases and Caput Draconis and all that stuff. And I did that up and down a room, probably about the size of the room I'm in here, my office at home,
Okay.
which is what, like 3 meters by 4 meters. It's not big. I just paced up and down in front of a tiny little camcorder and Janet Hershenson, who was the casting director. I did that like 2 or 3 times maybe. And like literally at the end of it, she said, "That's great. I'd like you to come to Leavesden Studios next week and meet Chris Columbus and David Heyman and the other guys from Chris Columbus's 1492, which is Chris's production company, who sort of co-produced it with Heyday and with Warner Brothers." So we did that. That was another adventure. Went to a film studios for the first time and met Chris Columbus, who is and was and always will be one of my idols of film directors, because he directed my favorite film of all time, which is Mrs. Doubtfire. And Chris was, it is a classic and it never ages. In fact, it gets better the more and more you watch it. You find just little nuggets of gold in it. But Chris was a delight. It's just this entire ball of energy and happiness and positivity, this little baseball cap and sort of constantly chewing gum and all the time. And we did the scene again, and we did some improvisation around it. And I remember he the second time through that we did it, we got to the bit where the fat lady says password, and Percy goes Caput Draconis, and Chris was reading in like the arts, and he went, "No, the password's changed." And I just remember my little brain going, "I don't know what to do in this situation. We've not done improvisation at school." And I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was something like, "Well, Dumbledore would have told me if the password had changed," and they seemed to enjoy that, and that was it. Like it was, I think my entire audition process was 25 minutes over 2 meetings. And then like 2 days later, I got this phone call going, "Congratulations, honey, you've got the part. You start in 2 weeks' time. Find yourself a good lawyer," basically. It was, yeah, just, it was very sudden and very surreal, I guess is the word.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can just imagine it'd be hard to kind of fathom or even take it in, where it's like, oh, like this is it, just 2 auditions, 25 minutes. Now I'm
It
having this
just,
role.
yeah.
Yeah,
At no point did it feel like anything serious was happening. Do you know what I mean? It was
yeah,
like
yeah. I
you
know what
go
you
into
mean.
this room, there's this nice American lady who's just like, "Yeah, just read the lines. It's fine." It's very chilled out. There was no pressure. It didn't feel like this is the role of your life. And of course, being 16 and having never been a professional, like I wasn't a professional actor. I don't think I'd have even called myself that for a while afterwards either. But like, I didn't know that, you know, when they say they're making a movie of the Harry Potter films, nothing really computes in your brain that this is going to be A, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of film, B, you know, something that's going to be released around the world in cinemas, and your face is going to be on the side of buildings and all sorts of weird things like that. Like none of that occurs to you until well until it's happening. And it's like, even when we were filming, I think there was a lot of us who were like, oh yeah, this is great fun. We're making a film. There's Alan Rickman. There's Maggie Smith. Lovely. This is weird and terribly exciting. And, you know, we're getting to do all sorts of exciting things. And then suddenly there's the film premiere and there's hundreds of people like screaming and the press and the camera flashes. And then literally it's everywhere in the world and there's no escape from it ever again. Not that you want to escape from it necessarily, but you know,
But yeah, you're tied to it, whether you like it or not. The magnitude of it, the entire Harry Potter umbrella, you're under that umbrella now. Whether you like it or not, I'm sure you love it, but it's eternal. Like, there's no way around it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember your first day on set?
I do. It was I think I'm right in saying everybody's first day on set. Which was we all got flown up to a place called Goathland up in North Yorkshire on the North Yorkshire moors, and we filmed we filmed the scene where we arrive at Hogsmeade Station and the scene where we leave Hogsmeade Station. So basically the bookends of the magical bit of the film, and we think. We filmed it in reverse. Yeah, we filmed it in reverse. So we all went up there, and I'm pretty sure that was the first day of filming. So there was, you know, basically all the school kids, and then there was Robbie Coltrane as well as Hagrid. But we all got on this lovely steam train, and we filmed the bit during daylight. We filmed the bit where, you know, Harry hugs Hagrid and says, you know, I'm not going home, not really, or whatever it is, and gets on the train, and we all go back off to London. And then once the light had turned and it had gone dark, we turned it around basically and filmed a bit where we all arrive at the beginning of the film to Hogwarts and get off, and there's Hagrid going, first year's this way and all that stuff. You can't see any of us in that scene. It's wonderful. You know, there's 300 extras getting off this train, and basically the entire shot is Hagrid with his lantern and Harry and the three amigos getting off the train. You don't see any of us in the background particularly at all. But yeah, that was our first day, and it was everybody's first day, and it was a fun bonding experience because we were literally trapped in this carriage on a steam train for like 7 hours just because you know it's all well and good filming on a steam train, but you know you have to chug the thing half a mile out of the station, which takes a long time because it's a steam train. And then somebody calls action, it chugs all the way in. You do one take, you all get off, you know, somebody calls cut, you get back on, they have to, you know, stoke the steam train up, get it into reverse, chug us all the way back. So it was a long process. And it gave us all a chance to kind of get to know each other. I remember talking about all sorts of weird stuff, you know, and sort of trying to get to know each other. And I was there. I was one of the older kids, so I was there without a chaperone, but all the other, you know, all the younger kids had their parents with them, or, you know, an older brother or a sister or an aunt or somebody. So there was this weird selection of people around none of whom had any experience on a film set. And then, of course, this Oscar-winning, you know, wonderful, incredibly
Alan Rickman,
well-experienced film crew. Yeah, like all these people who are just like, yeah, this is just normal day's work. And there's all of us going, oh my God, this is huge. And we're being put up in nice hotels and yeah, it's just madness.
I can imagine. And what makes this movie so special is those large set pieces, like the classrooms, the Great Hall, the costumes, like Hogwarts. Like, dude, like I don't know if you can see that right behind me, but I've got that little image from the first movie up there. Yeah, that's like things that get engraved.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, that gets engraved into your head, like when you're a child watching this movie for the first time.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just really fascinated as someone who worked on the movie. Do you get the same feeling or the same magic when you first walk onto these set pieces the same way as a viewer does when they watch it?
I think I can only speak for myself, but for me, I did, especially on Potter, because I loved the books and I read the books and I loved the source material so much. But I think one of the wonderful things that they managed to do on Potter, and it is entirely to be credited to Stuart Craig, the production designer, is somehow, and I don't know how they did it, and it's something between Stuart Craig's designs and the original source material, that it's so vivid, and somehow it fits exactly with what I'd say 95% of people imagined Hogwarts to look like. Like, you don't go into Hogwarts and I don't remember any of us going into a set and going, oh, that's not, that's cool, but that's not what I
Yeah,
imagined. Like,
yeah,
you
for
walk
sure.
onto the Great Hall set and you go, this is exactly how I imagined it to look in my head. And I mean, I can't, I don't know what it's like watching the film. Like, and it's probably hard for a lot of people now to say what it's like watching the film for the first time and going, that's what I imagined Hogwarts to look like, because
Yeah,
everybody's so familiar with it. And it is
of
so
course.
everywhere these days. But, um, but yeah, I remember like seeing the Burrow for the first time, or I mean, any of those sets. They would just, you could just look down the row of people going onto the set for the first time, and everybody was going, nailed it. Yeah, this is exactly what I saw in my brain when I was reading the books. And I don't know how you do. I don't know how you tick that box so precisely in everybody's brain. But it did. They're stunning, and they were so well thought out and well created and well crafted
Hmm.
that you really did feel like you were in those rooms. I mean, anybody who's seen any sort of behind the scenes stuff of Leavesden Studios will know that at the time it was an absolute dump. It was a derelict. It was a derelict air airfield hangar, aircraft engine factory kind of.
Jeez.
It had been used for loads of things. There was this old runway that we used to park all the cars on, and then we were basically in old warehouses and old aircraft hangars for the most part. So the roofs were leaky, it was rusty, it was cold, but inside there they'd created these amazing spaces, like the Great Hall, and you walked through these sort of dark, dingy places that were past their prime by a long way, and you'd open this wooden door and suddenly you'd be in this
You're transported into this
magical
magical
Great
world,
Hall,
right?
and it was,
Yeah.
yeah, and you would complete, and I mean, I know I'm not the only person to say it, but you could open the drawers and everything you would expect to find in a drawer that you will never see ever in the films. The drawers, everything you could ever possibly want to make it feel real was there. In the Burrow, for instance, you'd open one of the drawers in the kitchen and it would have odd sets of knives and forks that didn't really match, but were like perfect. They were exactly what the Weasleys would have had. You never see them. Nobody ever opens the drawers, but they're there, and that's
Hmm.
what makes it so incredible and so special.
Yeah, that the attention to detail just seems like even as a viewer watching it literally feels like you're in this magical school of Hogwarts where everything has its own unique
Yeah,
taste, style, everything. And that's what someone as
totally.
myself watching with my brothers growing up is you just get immersed in this universe. And it's hard to come out of it. It's like for a long
Yeah,
time, every kid at school just wanted to be at Hogwarts. And one thing that's so special about this movie is the cast. As I mentioned earlier, the larger universe around the three main characters. It's so depth and just so many details and just such great characters. But one thing as a person of color growing up that I noticed and I got attached to is the diversity and inclusion of the cast. And this is like 20 years ago. And we're having conversations today about, okay, there's lack of diversity in the arts, but 20 years ago these people were able to do it. Can you talk a little bit about the diversity and the inclusion of this cast?
I mean, I think it's interesting that you bring that up, because I've heard both sides of that. I've heard people say, and looking back, it's hard to say, because I know we're much more switched on about diversity of all descriptions, be it color, be it sexuality, be it gender, everything. We're much more switched on now than we were 20 years ago. It's just, that's a fact. It just is. And I have no recollection of it being one way or the other, but I've spoken to people, and people have spoken to me and said that they feel like there is a lack of diversity at Hogwarts. And it's an interesting point, and it's interesting that you, as a person of color, see it as there being as it being a diverse place. And I think yeah, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't something I was particularly aware of, but then I've never been somebody to particularly notice those kinds of things. People are people as far as I'm concerned. I'm interested in them as individuals. So I don't want to open my mouth and say awful things like I don't notice color, but you know the characters in
Yeah.
that situation. Do you know what I mean? You kind of that is that's Dean Thomas, or those are the Patil twins, or and that's about where I can stop on the diversity front. That actually,
Cho Chang,
there's
right?
not Cho Chang later on. To be fair,
Later on,
like
yeah.
she comes in. When does Cho arrive? Fourth
I think
film.
it was
I
the
wasn't
fourth
in
one,
that
yeah,
one.
Goblet of
Yeah.
Fire.
So we never. Yeah.
Not the
Yeah. We
first
didn't
one, yeah.
actually work together. You see. So that's probably the thing, is that actually the diversity, I think, starts to kick in at about the third film. If I'm being honest about it.
No, for sure. And that's the
But
important
that
thing
being,
about
yeah,
perspective, right? I see your perspective about it, and I can get someone else's perspective who kind of felt that maybe there wasn't. But as someone who grew up loving film, and I just, even seeing a little bit of yourself in some of these movies, it goes a long way, especially when you're just a kid
yeah.
in your,
Oh, completely.
5, 6, 7. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how
Yeah,
I saw
completely
it.
does. And I actually, yeah, I think what's interesting about it is that actually when you look at the larger spread of the films, and you look at like the and I think where it's actually most noticeable, less so I'd say in the named characters, but more so in the sort of general array of wizardry world, is that it is a very diverse place. And like I think the better examples, certainly in the earlier films, of places like Diagon Alley, where there are wizards of all shapes, sizes, colors, and backgrounds. Like there's this magical and wonderful tapestry walking down the street, and you can see, and like that's some of the wonderful stuff, is that you look at these sort of these wizards, and you've got Jamaican wizards and sort of really colorful robes, and you've got Asian wizards, and wizards from Africa and all sorts of different places that have their own sort of unique style within the wizarding world. It's not just pointy hats and cloaks.
Yeah,
It's
for
like
sure.
you can see where the costumes have kind of picked that up. It's less so at Hogwarts, it must be said, where everybody's wearing the same thing and it's all very uniformed. And to be honest, a lot of the main characters are predominantly white middle class
Yep.
characters. They are, and but that's what's written, and there's not much really
Yeah.
at that point, I think, that would have been done about that. I think in these days, if you'd made it now, I mean, for instance, look at Cursed Child, where you've got Hermione as a black woman.
Yeah,
There's nothing saying that Hermione can't be a black woman.
of course.
But in 1999, when the screenplay was being written, Hermione's a white girl, so you wouldn't think, nobody would have really thought to go, I know what we'll do. We'll make Hermione a person of color. Nobody would have done that. When that's, shocking to say that, but I think it's true.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just one of those things where we're just going to continue to have those conversations, and we're going to continue to see hopefully more inclusion and
Yeah.
diversity of not just skin color, but of all backgrounds, sexuality, gender, anything.
Yeah.
Because that's just the way the world is today. And we need to have the creative arts reflect the way it looks today rather than what it looked like 30 years ago.
Absolutely. And do you know what? One of the things that I've always loved about the Harry Potter fandom is, and I've always been really involved with the Harry Potter fandom, is because it's a wonderfully accepting place. And that really comes from the things that people find that they associate with Hogwarts. Is this a place where outsiders are welcome, outsiders are celebrated. And, I do a lot of work with the LGBTQ plus community, and the fandom around Potter and the gay community and the LGBTQ community is really, really strong. It has been going through a bit of a rough patch, let's say, for the last year and a half or so, unfortunately. And I hope we can kind of make progress there. But you look at fan fiction, and you look at how the fans talk about the characters and sort of come up with these sort of alternate canons for them. And I think it's wonderful that there is the ability to go, do you know what? It doesn't have to be what's written on the page. Cursed Child has shown us that you don't have to cast as written. People talk about Luna Lovegood being pansexual. People talk about Tonks being non-binary. I think that's where we are now, and that's where the Potter fandom arguably has been for a good 10 years before everybody else, really.
Yeah.
we're getting to that point now where people are going, do you know what? It doesn't matter if a character is written as a white straight man. He can be played by we can rewrite the character and he can become whoever he wants to be. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And the Potter fandom, through the wonders of fanfic, has been doing that for the last 10, 15 years or so. And that's progressive and that's wonderful.
No, absolutely. And just being on the topic of the cursed child, do you think it's inevitable that we're going to see the Star Wars Force Awakens kind of treatment where we see the original cast come back for this? Or do you think that's something that's just too out there?
At this point, I have no idea. I mean, it seems like the obvious thing to try and do. I don't know. I don't think Warner Brothers don't, as far as I'm aware, have any rights to the Cursed Child. It's an entirely separate piece of work. It's not part of the sort of the Wizarding World franchise, as it were. That being said, it seems like the obvious place for it to go at some point in time. If they want to do it with the original cast, they're going to have to get on and do it in the next 5 or so years, I would say. I don't think they will. And I think it would be problematic for them to try, because Cursed Child has taken such a left turn at the traffic lights in terms of the sort of the vision and the imagery and let's be frank, the casting. I mean, there would be, rightly so, absolute carnage if they took a play that has purposefully cast Hermione as a black woman and put Emma Watson in the part. That would be the wrong thing to do with Cursed Child, because Cursed Child, as far as I haven't actually seen it. This is a very point, or read it. But it's taken Harry Potter into the current world.
Yeah.
And into the
it's modernized it a lot. It's really modernized it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think taking it back a step is what would happen if you tried to film it using the original cast, I think. But I'm also not a big fan of turning plays into films, because I'm a theatre lover as much as anything else, and I'd much prefer people to go and see live theatre where the magic happens in front of your eyes on stage and not through computer wizardry. So yeah,
and the track record isn't the greatest for when you see theater plays being translated into movies. There are some great examples, but for the most part, it's usually pretty dodgy, and it doesn't replicate the magic of these performers.
It doesn't.
Story
no,
is. Yeah.
I mean, there's something magical about sitting in a chair in a room and everything happening right in front of your face. Whether we're talking about Shakespeare or Pinter or a musical Wicked or Hamilton or whatever, the fact that it all happens in this little box in front of you, and you can be anywhere in the world, and it's amazing. Where the cinema is wonderful and magical in a very different way. And it doesn't translate in the same way, because you can snap from here to here to here to here with the flick of an edit, and it doesn't have the same effect. So I think I think it's almost inevitable that Cursed Child will become something other than just a live stage play, whether that is a Hamilton style Disney Plus stream on whatever it is, HBO Max or whatever it is that Warner Brothers, whether it becomes essentially a live recording of the show, or whether they try and translate it into a film, who knows. I think it's probably inevitable at some point.
Yeah, most likely.
As is probably the Netflix style series that they keep saying is not happening, but probably will.
Yeah, with HBO Max and just how the streaming wars, streaming is like the new thing where every big studio has their own streaming platform. And when you have a franchise like the Harry Potter universe, the Wizarding World, with over billions of dollars, and you have the Fantastic Beasts franchise, it just seems inevitable that in some way, shape, or form, they are going to try to bring that over to HBO Max, whether it's a prequel or a sequel or another story altogether about some random kid in Hufflepuff just going through his day in life. Who knows, right? To feel like the possibilities are endless.
There's already a play of that as well, and it's marvelous. Have you seen Puffs?
No, I haven't.
Have you seen Puffs?
No.
Oh my god, you need to go and watch Puffs. Like immediately the second you hang up with me. It's available on Amazon Prime to download and Apple iTunes store or whatever. It is brilliant. It was off Broadway. We saw it off Broadway a couple of years ago, and it is honestly the most brilliant thing. It's a play about a guy called Wayne who's in Hufflepuff. At the same time that Harry's in Gryffindor, and it is brilliantly funny and just the most wonderful send off of everything Harry Potter. And it's well worth a watch. Well worth a watch.
Everyone listening, go check out Puffs. Sounds like an awesome
Go
fun
check out
time.
Puffs. It is. It's great.
Lastly, what would you say is the legacy of this franchise overall? And as someone who's part of it,
I think it's a really interesting time to be asking about the legacy of Harry Potter at the moment, considering the sort of the troubles that are
the self-inflicted comments and whatnot by the powers that be.
Yes, I hope that the legacy for Harry Potter is that it's a world where anybody who feels like they don't belong can be safe. That's what I found from it. That's what I get from it. And that is what I love about the Harry Potter fandom. I've spent, with 20 years since the first film came out nearly. So I've probably spent the last 18 years really very involved in the fandom. I adore it because I believe it does wonderful things in the world. You know, there's great things have come from the Harry Potter fandom, great authors, great film stars, great directors, all sorts of people have made their way. Darren Criss, you know, of Glee fame, of, you know, everything.
American Horror Story, was it Versace or whatever?
American Horror Story, the assassination of Gianni Versace. Like Darren Criss, Emmy, Grammy nominated winning legend, wouldn't be where he is if it wasn't for the Harry Potter fandom and Star Kid that sort of catapulted him to this platform. You know, there are incredible people out there because of Harry Potter.
Yeah, Margot Robbie, she was apparently a huge Potterhead. I saw some photos of her.
Huge Potterhead. Yeah, exactly. You know, and how much that has to do with Margot Robbie being Margot Robbie, who knows? But there are great people out there, and there have been great people discovered through the Harry Potter fandom. You know, Ivana Lynch would never have been Luna Lovegood if it wasn't for the fact that she was a diehard Harry Potter fan beforehand. You know, I think the fandom is a wonderful, wonderful place, and it's full of incredibly gifted and strong and caring and loving people. And I hope that is the legacy, that the Harry Potter fandom is a place where it is safe and happy, and you will be amongst people who will accept you regardless or because of, doesn't matter where you come from and who you are. I think it's a wonderful place, and it's full of wonderful people, and I hope it stays that way for a very long time to come.
Beautifully said, Chris. As we wrap up with Chris Rankin, it is now time for a segment I call the final act. Chris, I'm going to ask you 10 rapid fire questions about your likes, your dislikes, but here's the catch. We're going to give you 60 seconds to get through them. You up for the challenge?
It's okay. Let's do it.
Movies or TV shows?
TV shows.
Theater or watch at home?
Theater every single time. Have you not got this already?
Favorite TV show?
Oh, no. Right now, I would have to say Ghost Adventures because I'm binge watching all of it and it's terrible and I love it.
All right. Do you think that there's a rated R version of Mrs. Doubtfire that's rumored to be out there?
Yes, I do believe there is. And I really hope I get to see it one day.
Summer or fall?
Fall. Not because it's my birthday in November.
All right. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
No.
Favorite Harry Potter movie?
Azkaban.
Favorite Harry Potter character?
Ginny Weasley.
When was the last time you watched a Harry Potter movie?
Oh, I can't remember the last time I watched one all the way through, but the last one I saw any of was probably at Christmas because you just can't avoid it on the TV.
Oh, yeah. And lastly, describe Percy Weasley in one word.
Misunderstood.
Bam. Hey, we had like point 0.2 seconds left. You got through it, man. Awesome.
Yes!
There we go. Chris Rankin. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. And thank
It
you for
is
your
my
contributions to the arts.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been my absolute pleasure. It's nice. It's nice to have a conversation about Harry Potter that isn't the same old questions every single time. So
Well,
it's been a joy. Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. And again, this movie changed the way I look at films, and it's largely due to performances like yourself. So I wish you all the best, and I look forward to having you back on the show to discuss your next project.
I would love that. Thank you ever so much.